Welcome to How I Rent It, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on the tent rental industry. I'm Tony Ehrbar, the owner of American Tent, one of the leading event tent manufacturers in the U.S. As someone who got started in the event rental industry over 10 years ago, I'm excited to bring you the stories behind the people who keep events running smoothly. Was watching an episode of Shark Tank one night, had a couple of beers, and went on Craigslist, and in Green Bay was a tent rental business.
At the end of the day, failure is not an option. I'm going to do this.
Is this your first time on a podcast?
It is my first time on one, listening to one, seeing one. Yes, sir.
Each episode, we'll talk to inspiring event rental business owners to learn how they got started, the challenges they've faced, and their secrets to success. Whether you're dreaming of starting your own rental business or just love hearing great entrepreneurial stories with plenty of intent puns thrown in, this podcast is for you. Stephen has been through the rental industry for over 15 years.
And I was born under a tent.
This is the part where we're going to get into where we're going to have like VP of HR come in and just like okay the questions and answers. What does Ricky Bobby say? If you ain't first, you're last.
That's it. Absolutely.
So grab your coffee, your notebook, or just sit back and relax with a box of popcorn. Subscribe now on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, and join me as we uncover the journey behind the tent rental industry and how I rent it. Welcome back to How I Rent It, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the tent rental industry, where we share valuable insights, success stories, and lessons from entrepreneurs who built their rental business from the ground up. I'm your host, Tony Ehrbar, owner and CEO of American Tent. And today I'm excited to welcome Ramon Luna. Ramon launched Peachy Party in 2022, and in a short time has grown into a trusted name for tents and event rentals across the Atlanta area. Beyond running his own company, Ramon is active in the industry, always looking for ways to streamline operations and share what he's learned with others, especially those new to the tent rental industry. In today's episode, we'll hear how Ramon got started, what fueled his growth, and the mindset that helped him run efficiently in a competitive market. If you're looking for inspiration and practical advice for someone who's building a modern rental company from the ground up, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Ramon, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Tony. Nice to see you again.
Excited to have you on. Follow along online, and Paige was excited. She does all the production for the podcast and said you got a lot of great content out there. So especially as someone who's newer to the industry, we've had a lot of veterans on. And so to hear someone who started a business 3 years ago, I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons along the way. So excited about that. So for those along on video, I went to daddy-daughter camp this weekend. And so if you see my hands, I got my Brewers and Michigan colors on, and then I got my Packer toes. So, and then we have a Packer home game today that I'm going to. So representing the Packers. For those who are not on video, feel good about that because you're not going to see my fingers coming up and down into the screen.
Nice.
Cool. So I guess let's start out. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your company, maybe include location, number of employees, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you like the way I'm dressed, by the way? I've seen a caliber of guests that you guys have had, and I am way on low on a totem pole. So I figured I'd overcompensate a little bit by dressing up a little bit.
I like it.
So I hope you like that.
Tuxedo shirts I like tuxedo shirts.
Well, thank you for the introduction. My name is Ramon Luna. I started Peachy Party in 2022 was really my first season. So this is rounding off my fourth season. And yeah, we're based in Atlanta, Georgia. What else can I say? Small company, started from the ground up, like you said, with zero experience in the event and rental industry. I just kind of wanted to dip my toes into entrepreneurship and see how it went.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back to starting the business. You started in an interesting time coming out of COVID. We talked to Darren Randall, who started, he was in line at a Chick-fil-A and COVID had just started. And he's like, oh, we could get tents for these Chick-fil-A's, and that his kind of went from there. But talk to me about getting the business off the ground. Kind of what was the impetus for getting started?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always had entrepreneurship, in my sights from, since a teenager going into my college years. I just was never able to pull the trigger. But finally, I made them. So I went to undergrad in Baltimore, Maryland, and I have a friend, and I lived in Baltimore for about 20 years. And I have a friend who has a moon bounce business. His name is David Eady. Shout out to Mr. Moon Bounce. And so he kind of schooled me a little bit and said, hey, if I had to start over, I would do tents. And what he said was they're more corporate, quote unquote. And what he meant by that was that they're not as weekend intensive, meaning you could drop off Friday, pick up on Monday. Little did I know, I'd still be working on weekends, of course. But that was that's what kind of got me started. He kind of gave me the game that he had at the time. And I took his knowledge and ran with it in Atlanta.
And what were you doing in that 20-year gap in between having your own business and graduating from school?
Yeah, so I have an 18-ish year career in the finance industry. So I worked for companies like T. Rowe Price, Voya, Edward Jones, and different roles, from fund accounting to valuations, equity and fixed income analysis. My last stint was actually at Edward Jones, a company based in St. Louis, where we were basically managing the investment managers. So it took a little bit of all the knowledge that I've gained throughout the years and applied it there. And that's what I was doing before I kind of made the jump.
I always tell people finance and accounting are the best way to understand how a business is run. Like if you can look at a P&L and a balance sheet, that's basically how to run a business, right? I mean, a lot of people run it off the P&L. I'm sure you're a balance sheet guy, I would guess, because you're thinking about cash, thinking about your assets, thinking about all those things. So finance is definitely a good way to start. So you had a head start on how to run a business. That's great. So how did you fund the business originally?
So I started with, one 20 by 20 tent, which is, the high peak tent, which is what everybody says you should start with. 40 black chairs, 4 round wood tables, and then 2 banquet wood tables. So it wasn't a large ticket, especially not at that time. Things are a little more pricey now, of course, but at that time it wasn't a big ticket. So I'm a points junkie, credit card rewards points junkie. So I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure that I found a good 0% APR offer that came with maybe some Delta points or something like that, and that's probably how I did it. So I've been doing it for a long time, so that's more than likely that's probably how I started.
And did you jump all the way in, or were you kind of doing weekend warrior style to see if it was right and taking care of stuff on the weekends?
Yeah, no, the typical weekend warrior thing. It's kind of, I feel like that's kind of the norm in this industry. I started off on the weekends and at nights, and then eventually I just made the jump about 15 months ago, actually. So a little more than a year ago is when I made the jump.
Yeah. What was that tipping point, and how did you make that decision to jump from weekend warrior over to full time?
If I'm being honest, I just wasn't feeling work anymore. I was, after 4 or 5 years working from home, doing the same old thing that I've been doing, for the last 15, 20 years. I just had enough. Honestly, I just was not feeling it. And, I just decided to give it my all on this industry, see how it went. So,
okay. When you were doing for those first couple of years, when it was over the weekends, it was you, and did you have a small crew? A lot of times people start with friends or family members. So who was kind of on your crew at that point?
yeah, I mean, it's kind of, believe it or not, it's not changed a whole lot since then. I'm still a one-man show, which I know is pretty rare. Well, it's not rare, I should say, but I don't even know how to put it. I know it's anybody else who's been on this podcast already definitely has a crew, but no, I still don't have a crew. I have a rotation of people, I'd say about 10 people that I can kind of call on, and I contract throughout the year. And that's how I kind of have gotten by. I started with, kind of my wife's nieces and nephews. My brother also moved here to Atlanta from New York. So I called on him as well, even though he had a full-time job as well. But that's kind of how I started and how I'm still going, unfortunately.
What does your inventory look like now? You kind of told us where you started.
Yeah, it has not changed much. I just added more. Right. So, I have, a couple hundred chairs, black and white, mostly high peak tents, 20 by 20, 20 by 30, 20 by 40, a few, padded resin garden chairs. And I think that's the main stuff. We also are doing a little more in dance floors as well, trying to do a little more with that. I feel like that's a good opportunity for us as well. So we have we haven't honed in on an exact strategy or niche just yet, unfortunately. Okay. So I'm still bouncing all over the place, but hopefully I can kind of hone in on something soon.
Yeah. I mean, product market fit, figuring out the right customers, figuring out where you slot in, right? There's a lot of good rental companies down in Atlanta. And so lots of times, right, it's trying to see where the gap is in the market. So you're kind of in that phase right now.
Exactly.
Sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
and you've had Steven on from Classic, and there's a bunch of other
Yeah.
companies here, T3, and they all do a great job. So I don't feel the need to like jump into any big tents or anything like that. I don't see necessarily a big gap in the market there. So my customer has really been like just homeowners having an event at their backyard, but also these customers are not necessarily serviced to the highest degree because their events are too small for the bigger companies, and they may not get the service that the level of service that they desire from the weekend warriors.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm filling in that gap right now, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job at it. And I like servicing that niche as well. So that's kind of been my thing for now.
Nice. So first event, talk me through how it went. Any challenges or go smoothly?
No, well, I mean, I got it done. No, I remember vividly. I got a last minute call for the 20 by 20 that I had at the time. So of course I took it. It was probably like the day before. So this is before I really had the knowledge that I should be calling 811, things like that. But I went ahead and did it. And I went by myself. And that's because, in all the groups, at this point I had been to tent school. I watch a bunch of YouTube videos, and, everybody says you can do it by yourself. And so I went by myself, and I don't know if you know, but I'm like 5'5" and like 150 pounds, maybe, so needless to say, it was a struggle. It felt like hours. I spent like hours just trying to put this thing up. I struggled with the very last leg, the very last corner of the tent. Eventually, I figured I can kind of prop it up on a ladder and get it up there, and that's how I got it over. But yeah, it was not, it wasn't fun. And I mean, the thing that kind of saved me was like the homeowner kind of left me there as they were preparing for their event, because I just hate being watched and looking like an amateur. So
Yeah.
that's kind of was a saving grace for me. But I was there for hours, it seemed like, and that's
Nice.
that's the first and the very last time that I did an event by myself. From there on out, I've forever put up a tent by myself. And
Yeah.
I would say also there's such a thing as being in tent shape. Like, I didn't, before the season starts, you're a little sluggish. But then as the season progresses, of course, you start getting your body back. And by that, at that point, I hadn't been to the gym in years. So yeah, it was a
Yeah.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah, those cross cables are a little bit easier to set up by yourself, right? Because all the poles can rotate. On a smaller frame tent, you can get a frame jack, and that helps out. I like to put things on 7-foot legs because it's easier for the crew, right, to be able to hoist. But a lot of those are on 8-foot legs, and I'm 6'2", and I still can't, when we had our rental business, get those up in the air. So you mentioned some resources that you use to kind of educate yourself. Obviously, back in the day, you just kind of learn as you go along. But talk me through some of the resources that you've used to get yourself up to speed.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's probably a little bit of a curse at this point, because I feel like I overanalyze everything. So I watch all the YouTube videos. I watch I listen to all the podcasts. I've been to tent school probably 3 times at this point. So it's a little bit of a curse, but I just feel like I need to take it all in before I can kind of shake that imposter syndrome, if you will. But those are the biggest things, between tent school and then YouTube. Those are pretty good. And then obviously just asking questions for anybody who would give me the time of day.
Yeah. Yeah, this industry is great about sharing knowledge. Are you a member of ARA or the ATA TRD tent rental division?
Yeah, I am. I even went, I think before my first season, I went to the Matra show. I think I went to the ATA show as well. And this before I even started again. So
Yeah.
I tried to educate myself as much as I could.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, you mentioned 811. I think when people get started, even when we got started, the guy who sold us a business didn't think about things safely, right? And so learning about using 811, making sure you get all those things set up, you want to do things safely, got to have insurance in place. So talk me through some unexpected costs that maybe you didn't anticipate before starting your tent rental business.
I think I've been pretty good at managing costs so far. The one thing that I think a lot of people miss might be replacement costs. And most people see this business as, oh, you're buying one time and it pays for itself, and then everything from there is profit. And that's not the case at all. I think it could be the case for some items, but for one, things just aren't made the same. And not to say that I knew how they were made in the past, but I just know that things aren't meant to last as long as they used to be. The quality just is not the same, number one. But also you end up looking, like a tired old business if you don't refresh your equipment, you don't keep your stuff up. So I would say that's probably the most underrated cost is just the replacement cost to keep your inventory fresh.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of tied to all that, was there any big challenges, small challenges you face when getting the business off the ground?
Not necessarily, honestly. I mean, like I said, I started off with mentorship, and I didn't stray too far away from that. I've made a few purchases that I just kind of, let roll off, that probably weren't the best, but there's nothing really that I would say to this point that I would point to as a huge mistake. Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's important to learn from other people. So you're out there a lot in the industry, you're sharing with people, you're helping them kind of think about how to get started. So are there any either mistakes or lessons you learned or mistakes or lessons you've seen others that you'd want to share with someone who's dipping their toes in, thinking about getting in, doing the weekend warrior thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make are maybe not thinking about the customer psychology as much as they should be. For example, I mentioned that I started off with wood tables. In my opinion, that was a mistake, honestly. Especially for the market that I serve, wood tables are super expensive. They're super heavy, and they're just not. To me, they're just not worth it. And then, but when you go out and you ask, the pros, they're like, oh, what's wood versus plastic? The answer is always wood. But then you look and you realize, okay, well, they have both products priced exactly the same. Who in their right mind is going to choose plastic over wood, right? Unless they're moving it themselves, which we're the ones
Yeah.
moving, right? So then they don't think about the customer psychology, and you price things, based on the way you want to design your business. So immediately I said, well, I don't necessarily want to do wood, so let me increase the price of wood and let me keep the price of plastic the same. And of course, now all of a sudden
Yeah.
everybody wants the plastic, right? So people don't think about that. Same thing with like, black versus white chairs. White chairs obviously require a lot more maintenance, but they're priced the same, right? So, most people are going to choose the white, but if you price them differently and accordingly, then you may have a different reaction from the customer. So I think a lot of people don't think about that, especially the newbies, people that don't necessarily have like a business background. So it's something to think about that they should really consider. I would say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes. It's just not taking into account the customer behavior or psychology, whatever the terminology might be.
Yeah, you can move customers in certain directions based on how you bring things to market. I think that's smart. And I also think a lot of people, when they first get into the industry, they undervalue themselves, right? And so you want to keep your prices low. You don't think about rental companies, you're essentially a moving company. That's half of what you do is moving things around and thinking about, it's heavy. You can carry 2 of these versus 5 of these to the job site from the truck. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, and
Um,
actually, I'm gonna add one more to that. Actually, yeah, the not undervaluing your services is a pretty big one, especially for newer companies. When I started, like I had the foresight to charge for like weekend services or after hour services. And that's something that a lot of people don't do, even though in reality they were doing me a favor, right? Like nights and weekends are the times that I can actually show up to these job sites. But if
yeah.
a customer specifically requested it and it was a must, then I had to kind of in the foresight to kind of make sure that I charge for those services and get paid accordingly. And I think a lot of companies, a lot of smaller companies or companies that are just starting off don't do that well enough, and they end up leaving money on the table and quite frankly just doing the industry a disservice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, all those additional fees can add up. When we talked to Darren Randall, he talked about a lot of those that he's added since, right? Things that you don't think about. So maybe looking at Google Maps ahead of time and charging an extra fee for a long haul from where you can park the truck to getting to the site. So yeah, revenue is one thing, but if you can't do it profitably, you shouldn't be in business because you're just, beating your head against a wall. You're not able to put money back into the business or put money into your pocket. And the very first person who doesn't get paid when the bills are tight is the owner, right? Yeah,
Indeed. And I've tried to implement like the profit first mentality, which is, kind of make sure you get paid first and then run the business from the money that's left over, which is kind of, backwards from where most people think. That doesn't always work out, but I'm
yeah,
trying.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. So talk me through growing the business, and we'll talk some additional advice as you've now grown, now that we've kind of looked in the past. But any strategies that helped you grow the business from kind of weekend warrior to where you are today, maybe on the marketing side or on the operations side?
Most of my customers are coming from Google Ads and Meta Ads. I wish I could say I had a more strategic approach to this. I'm now starting to implement or research or put in the pipes in place for some email marketing and some text message marketing, which I have a pretty good list of clients at this point, so I should be able to leverage that list and reach out to them. And again, that's an area of weakness for me that I'm exploring right now. I don't necessarily have a strategic, something that I implemented that can really help anybody, unfortunately. But definitely don't skip out on Google Ads. Make sure you get it done the right way. Don't just throw money at it and expect it to yield results. Make sure you're tracking it. And Meta Ads, if that's something that's helpful for you as well.
You certainly seem like someone who is kind of a lifelong learner, wants to think about how to best do things. Have you found any good resources as you've been exploring the marketing side of things, either YouTube or books or something that's been helpful? Because that is something that's everyone I talk to, that's how people get out there, right? You get reviews, you get out there with ads, and that's really the way. I mean, Google's 90% of how people search today, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Right now, I'm working with an old colleague actually who's trying to get something off the ground, and so he's basically building like a CRM and helping people, help us, building an offer for small businesses like myself to kind of help them with that. So I've just been kind of exploring things with him, between that and then ChatGPT, of course, to helping me, with building landing pages and making sure that I show up, making sure that everything is optimized for SEO, those sort of things. Those are the tools that I use most often.
Yeah, I think people sometimes feel like, and I talked to my team about this at American Tent. It feels like sometimes GPT's cheating, right? Like you're expected to do this project, and I have some people who for them it felt like they were kind of cheating. For me, you need to be as efficient as possible. You're a one man show. How do you use AI in your business, kind of day to day?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I've gotten a lot of feedback on just my abruptness of like for example, when I'm answering emails, I'm just I'm almost talking in bullet point format when I answer emails, which is not necessarily the ideal way, right? So of course I built a GPT to say, hey, make sure the tone is professional and courteous. So I just kind of put my responses there and let it kind of shape the way that I should send it out to the customer. So that's one thing that's helped me big time. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't touch AI. I mean, in so many formats, whether it's sometimes even generating an image for a landing page that I want to build for a new product offering that I want to offer, but I don't necessarily have the best pictures, or maybe there are pictures that I can find, but I need to alter them to make them look a little more professional or a little more visually appealing. So there's so many ways, and I mean, there's no way. AI is a must. It's not cheating. It's the way that things are now, and anybody who's not using it is, quite frankly, probably going to be left behind, unfortunately. So that's my take.
Yeah. So if you think about someone, obviously, I think with my parents, like I have to help them with their phones, right? And then if you think back to someone who's maybe in their 50s, AI's seems like there's a steep learning curve to it. Is there something you did to teach yourself about AI? Was there any courses you took, or was it just kind of trial and error jumping in?
Yeah, I just jumped in. I started. It's a free service. It is for the most part, at least. You can, if you're not using it regularly, you can just go on ChatGPT.com and start using it. And that's how I started. I think it was at the time. I think it was limited to like 5 or 10 inquiries a day, and that's what I was. That's how I was using it. As soon as I ran out,
Yes.
I just come back the next day and start using it. And yeah, I mean, if you have not given it a go at this point, you are your parents, for lack of a better word. Like that is you at this point if you're not using it. So yeah, it's a must. Yeah, there's no resource that I could point to. Don't get me wrong, I do go whenever there is like a seminar, whether it's through ARA or, I went to Podcast Summit, for example, an event called Podcast Summit very recently here in Atlanta, things like that. If there's an AI component, I'm prioritizing that seminar over anything else, most of the time at least, because I need to know how I can use AI in my business in every single aspect of it. So I try. I'm way behind. Don't get me wrong. Like there's so many things I want to try, especially with the voice, with video, because I want to
Yeah.
do more content. Right now I'm producing a newsletter, but nobody reads anymore, right? So I want to put it in audio form. I might want to put it in video form, but I don't have the time. Number one, and I don't like the way I look on camera. So it's like it's one of those things. Like I'd rather just give it to an AI and let it do it. So maybe
Yeah.
down the line I will. Yeah, so you just got to explore and get out there with it.
Yeah, there's some good courses that I found on Coursera and some of those other Udemy and those kind that help with prompt writing, because that's how you most efficiently work with AI, right? Is thinking about how do you write the right prompt to get the answer that you need, because it can take a while to hone GPT into where you're going. So I found that that's been pretty helpful for me.
That's good. That's good, actually. Yeah.
So, talk me through thinking about new products or services that you maybe want to add to your business. What's the decision process or thought process behind that?
Man, right now I simply just put it on a website. I might build a landing page. I might email, people. So right now the way I differentiate my list a little bit is I know who's an event professional versus who is just a customer having an event. So I may reach out to my event professionals and say, hey, we're thinking about offering this product. What are your thoughts? But I would say the most effective thing right now is just throw it on your website, see what kind of bookings or, our process right now is not automated. So nobody can actually book it until, we send them a quote for it. So it doesn't hurt anything to just throw it on a website, see what kind of traffic it generates, see who's clicking on it, who's requesting it, who's asking for it. For example, I bought these, we call them like chestnut garden chairs, and I just threw them on the website. There was two different variations of it. One was a lighter wood, one was a darker wood, and people were requesting small quantities like 20, 10, which it's not going to be worth it for me. And then finally I
Yeah,
got a big booking for like 200 of them. So I was like, okay, now I can kind of I'll take that, and then I can service the smaller orders because I know I'll have them in preparation for the big orders. So that's kind of how
yeah.
I've been doing things, and it's been working okay so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good market research. I've had several people on the podcast who said the same thing. Even if they don't have it yet, you put it out on the website, you see how much interest you get. If someone calls for it and you can't buy it or whatever, you can always say, let's rent it out that weekend. And then after you get 4 or 5 hits on something, then you know it may be a winner product, because nothing worse than going to the ARA show, seeing something you think is awesome, spending thousands of dollars on it, and then it sits in the warehouse. I mean, you want to sweat your assets, right? You want them to
Yeah.
be out every single weekend generating for you. I don't know if you think about, like, you buy a tent or you buy chairs. Do you think about how long it'll take you to pay it back and kind of when you'll start seeing an ROI on it?
I think about it, but mostly because that's the way I've been taught. But I honestly hate that approach, and that's because you slap a general rule of thumb like, oh, 10 rentals and it pays for itself. But in that 10 rentals, that thing can be obsolete, or you wore it out by that time.
Yep.
So it's okay as a rule of thumb, I think, but you don't want to be relying on that thing. Like 10 rentals on a plastic chair, I don't know if it's going to last that long. I mean, I don't know the way
Right.
things are now again. So, for maybe, things that are, things like tents, okay, I can maybe accept something like that, but I try not to rely on that rule of thumb that much.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, you're a finance guy, right? You mentioned there's a lot of people who maybe don't have that finance background. So, talk me through the systems that you use to manage your finances, to manage your bookings. I know everyone's a little different with what systems they use.
I am a finance guy, but I feel like, a lot of that went out the window when I started the business. And like I tried to use my Excel skills, of course, to kind of keep everything in line, but it just got so complicated. So eventually I gave in and started using QuickBooks. So that's my accounting software, of course. And
Yep.
then I tried to do everything in spreadsheets for inventory management, gave up on that about a year and a half ago. And now I'm using Good Shuffle. So those are the two that I use for inventory management, accounting software. What else is there? I mean, I still end up using a lot of spreadsheets, but I now have offloaded some of those responsibilities to ChatGPT, for example. Like even so, I was using the ARA profit calculator, which I wasn't using it from the beginning, but I started using it about a year ago, and then I noticed it just wasn't the best for me, so I started altering it, in the spreadsheet itself. So I saved the copy and started altering it to fit my needs. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, let me just put, upload this to ChatGPT, tell it to ask me questions. So now that custom GPT's only job is to track how profitable I am on certain jobs. So I'll download the data from Good Shuffle, for example, upload it to ChatGPT. That GPT knows to ask me certain questions like, hey, was this a 2-person crew? How many miles? It tries to calculate the miles itself, but it never does a good job for some reason. I don't know why ChatGPT cannot get that right, but the mileage, the timing, it asked me how long we were on site, things of that nature, and ultimately it spits out, hey, this is what your profit margin was on this job. So I was doing that manually, via spreadsheets, and now, it's just a automate, not really automated, but it's just I've uploaded that to a GPT. So yeah, those are the things. So ChatGPT, QuickBooks, Good Shuffle. Yeah, I think that's it. There's probably more, but that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah, there are certain things that GPT is not yet capable of doing. So GPT-5 that just came out has a little more agency. So I was talking it through the other day. I like men's soccer. And so I was asking when the next call up for the roster was. And it's like, well, do you want me to look every morning and tell you once it comes out, which is kind of cool features. Cool. But it is bad at certain things. It is terrible at fantasy football. So I would not recommend using it for that. Paige, again, who's recording the episode, our wonderful director of marketing, just played her this last weekend, and I did beat her. So I want to get that out into the world. But yeah, GPT nice. Is terrible at fantasy sports, so don't use it there.
Copy that.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit earlier around maybe I'll call them blind spots. Not everyone is good at everything in running a business. So, and then you mentioned a friend or an agency you're working with. Talk to me about how you think about using others, having to pay someone to help you think about things. Are there any other areas where you work with an agency or work with someone outside your business?
No, but I need to. I'm really, I'm getting better, or I've decided that I'm going to get better at like sales and being extroverted, which is why I agreed to do this kind of thing. But that kind of thing is just doesn't come naturally to me, but it is so necessary, like to go to all the networking events, the Chamber of Commerce, any wedding professional events, catering events, things of that nature. And so I started doing a lot more of that last year. I felt like I had so much time. I just wasn't as busy, I think. Especially when I went full time, the difference between, having a full time job and doing this on a side hustle, then I was just doing this full time. And I felt like I had all the time in the world. So I was going to all the things. This year, I feel like I have a little less time for some reason, but I'm still I think going to those things is super important. But the minute I can offload this responsibility to somebody, I will. And so I need like a killer salesperson that can create content and go out and be the representative of this company. I think that really would be the ideal. Those are really the blind spots that I have. Content is everything, sales is everything, and those are two things that do not come naturally to me. So those are on the top of my list.
Yeah, I mean, when you start out, you got to be this CE everything because you got to pay the bills somehow. But I think the best way, to build an organization is to understand where your I wouldn't call them weaknesses are, but either blind spots or areas that don't bring you joy. They're the areas where like you finish a day of all marketing or you're out at all trade shows or something. I mean, your energy is going to be down, maybe a rough day. So yeah, I think when you build a business, to your point, a salesperson, right? That's something that doesn't bring you energy necessarily. So is it more you're an introvert, or is it more, you mentioned maybe imposter syndrome earlier and not feeling like you're good enough for something? What is it that's doesn't get you excited about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's probably a mixture of everything. I was an introvert. I am no longer. I am not an introvert any longer, like I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, it's just a mixture of all that stuff. The only reason why I say I'm an introvert is because I've heard the definition that stuck with me was, at the end of the day of being out in the mixer, if you get home and you're like, now I'm kind of recharged. That is how I feel. Then you're introverted.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like people. I can talk to people. You know,
Yeah.
that's not an issue for me. So
Yeah.
it's a weird thing. Yeah, it's probably a little mixture of everything.
Yeah, no, I think that's important to think about introversion and extroversion that way, because it isn't necessarily that you don't like people. It's just after you need like your time to decompress. I've gone from being more of an extrovert to a little bit more of an introvert, which is interesting.
Mm. Why?
Love being around people, but it's just, I think it's the recharging nature of things. So there's a really great book called Six Types of Working Genius that talks about what things bring you joy and what things kind of drain your battery. It's a quick read. It's written
Six
by
types of
Patrick
genius.
Lencioni. Yeah, Six Types of Working Genius. But it talks about like different areas that bring you joy and don't bring you joy, and it's all the way back to like ideation and innovation. There's the activation steps, so that's asking hard questions, kind of thinking about strategies, getting a team excited about things, and then all the way down to enablement and tenacity. And those are the areas where it's like, those are the tactical things you have to get done. And I know for myself, when I get down into tactical things, nobody wants to invite me to a tactical meeting because I'm going to start throwing idea bombs into those. And if I have a whole day of tactical meetings, I go home and I'm like, all right, I got to put the office on and sit here and just like stare off into space. Right.
Okay. I think I've heard you mention that before, actually. So I meant it's probably on one of my list of books that I need to
Yeah.
circle around to.
So you're out in the industry a lot, trying to help people in the industry. Talk me through why that's important to you. Are there any other lessons and things you really like to drive home with people when you're out there?
No, I think it's a selfish thing for me, honestly. I mean, like I said, with the newer guys or the weekend warriors, they're probably doing the industry a disservice when they don't price things accordingly. So I wanted to kind of educate. Well, I don't want to educate. I don't know. I just feel like they're doing the industry a disservice, and that affects me somehow. So I figured, let me just go ahead and
Yeah.
try to teach you the quote unquote right way or different way. So maybe it's a selfish thing. I also like to document it because I forget things easily. I don't know. Maybe my memory since my college days, I had a lot. There was a lot of sleepless nights, and I used a lot of no-dos to get through school. And I
Okay.
think my memory's been bad since then. So I document it for myself as well, so I can have something to look back on and leave
Yeah.
something for my kids to look back on in case they want to.
Yeah.
So they're probably all selfish reasons. It's probably not a noble idea that I'm trying to share this with anybody. But yeah, there you go.
Okay. How many kids do you have?
Two kids.
Two. Okay.
Yeah.
How old are they?
5 and 8.
Okay. Those are
Yeah.
fun ages. All right. Let's jump into some more rapid fire, fun, interesting rental questions. What is one tool or piece of tent equipment you can't live without?
So in my truck, there's always a sledgehammer, there's always a tarp, and there's always my jack jaw stake puller. Those are the three things that never ever leave the truck. I'm supposed to be working with a group of peers, and we're supposed to be compiling a list of things that we should always have in the truck. And I need to do that, so I'm slacking. But those are the three things that are always in the truck, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the standard tent go bag, right? The things you absolutely need out there. Any small items that's in the glove box of your truck?
Well, not really. I mean, the thing I keep in the glove box are like napkins and phone chargers. I've heard zip ties mentioned a bunch of times. Which of course, they're I don't zip ties for me are my inventory is pretty simple, so they're specific to if I'm doing any lights, and that's the only time I bring them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of napkins and the phone charger are the ones that kind of get used the most out of the glove box.
Yeah. Got it. What's a memorable event or project that you worked on?
I don't think I have a memorable project. I seem to gravitate or enjoy the like the small block parties where they need 10, 20 pop-up tents, and I need to be there in the morning and then come back later in the afternoon. Those seem to energize me because I don't necessarily deal with too many people, which is going back to the introverted thing. But yeah, I mean, those are the ones that I've been seeing I gravitate towards. Yeah, nothing so far. It's only been a short 4 years, so I don't have anything that really stands out too much.
Okay. And are you down in the city or are you out in one of the suburbs? Like where, because Atlanta is just, every time I go, it's such a big place. Where are you in Atlanta?
Yeah, the warehouse is located in just west of Atlanta.
Okay.
Still, I would say still within city limits. Most of our jobs are in the city. So yeah.
So, any funny moments, unusual moments, things that were left behind by customers?
Honestly, nothing too wild just yet. I've heard the other answers. But yeah, I've got nothing wild so far. And again, we're only setting up smaller 20 by 30s, 20 by 40
Yeah.
at the most. And, most people are not leaving anything behind. So no funny
Yeah.
stories just yet.
We've had to actually edit out a couple of answers that people gave us for that question. I ran it past my VP of HR, and she was like, "Well, I don't know if you should share that one." So,
HR is no fun. Come on. Come on, HR.
talk me through the most rewarding part of running a business.
Honestly, again, after work, especially after COVID, being inside, working from home, it got to the point where I had to schedule a 1 hour walk around my block, because otherwise I'm in front of the computer for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So being outdoors has been fun. I mentioned not going to the gym for a few years. Now at this point, it just feels on a good day, let's say, right? I'm just going to set up 2 or 3 jobs. It feels like I'm just going to go ahead and get a workout in the morning and then I'm
Right.
home. So that it allows me flexibility. I drop off and pick up the kids. So just the flexibility, being outdoors, and yeah, those are the things that I would point to.
Do you get a weight set at home in between the weekend to be able to do some bench pressing or something?
Absolutely not. Are you kidding? No workouts here.
Yeah. I was talking to someone about. I was like, I'm just feeling tired. I don't think I'm sleeping well, and they're like, "Well, do you work out?" And I was like, I'm tired. Why would I want to think about working out at this point? Like maybe I can just start working on better sleep habits or something. But so, any big risks you've taken, and how did they turn out?
No, I'm pretty, again, back to I'm pretty not methodical. I just overanalyze everything, and I don't think I've made any huge mistakes just yet. But stay tuned. Still early days.
All right, so we'll jump into some rapid fire non-rental questions, just learning about you a little bit. So, if you could open another business completely unrelated to the event rental industry, what would it be?
I'm not sure yet, and that's because I'm trying to, stay away from the shiny new things. I had in the past, I've been a kind of person who has a million ideas, and when you want to explore everything. But now I'm really trying to stay focused. So I'm not sure yet, but it's definitely something that's going to be leveraging AI in a heavy way. If I had to guess, so yeah.
Okay, got it. So you talked about having to pump yourself up sometimes, maybe to go to a long wedding show, which I mean, absolutely understand that. Those are draining events. So if you had a theme song that played every time you entered a room, what would it be?
So I'm a big Jay-Z fan, but the first answer that came to mind when this question came up is Dipset Anthem by Cameron Juelz.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know about that one, but it just takes me back to a time I was in college. It was a fun time. It gives me a lot of good feelings. So that one always gets me hyped up, gets me in a good mood. So that's the one, Dipset Anthem,
Okay.
Cameron and Juelz.
Maybe we should start using these answers as the outro music for everyone's episode. That might be kind of fun
Ooh,
to
I like
throw
that.
that song
I
up
like
there
that.
so
Yeah.
people, yeah. You mentioned podcasts before. Are there any podcasts you love listening to?
This one for sure. I love listening
All right.
to Under the Vinyl. Under the Vinyl is another good one.
Yeah.
A little bit more on the entertaining side, but also related to business. It's called My First Million. That's really one of my favorites. And I don't know. There's so many. I literally have like rotate of maybe 12 podcasts that I listen to right now. I used to be a junkie of personal finance as well, fire
Okay.
movement, things of that nature. Not as
Yeah.
much. At some point, you just kind of graduate out of that and start thinking, a little bit differently. And no, it's still, it's still fire principles, but I'm not listening to as much of fire pack podcasts as I did in the
Okay.
past.
Yeah. So I mean, the name even kind of ties into it, but How I Built This by Guy Raz is similar to My First Million, where it talks about like Sarah Blakely. How did she start Spanx? Like, how did she get to where she is? So that's another really great podcast, very
That
similar
is a
to
good
My
one.
First Million.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
those are a little lengthy, if I remember correctly. Are they like almost 2 hours?
Oh, I throw that on 2x speed. My wife gets in the car
Oh.
and she's like, "How do you listen to this? I can barely understand the guy. I'm super anxious listening to this." But for me, it's just I'm trying to absorb the knowledge, right? So maybe it's on 1.5 times speed, but yeah,
Yeah, I would say 2x is aggressive. I got mine on 1.2.
Okay.
Yeah. So another one is actually built to sell. That's another one that I listen to pretty frequently. It's kind of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more about building a company, ready for sale, or how to get ready for sale, which is, I guess, ultimately, or should be, everybody's goal. So I listen to that as well a lot.
Okay. All right. So I'm giving you $10,000 to take out a gigantic billboard somewhere in Atlanta. What's a message you want to get out to millions of people? And it can't be an advertisement for your business.
I would say I'm going to take a line from Jay-Z here, because I was listening to this song yesterday, and just say, nobody's built like you. You design yourself.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. I like that. Love Jay-Z. All right. So if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
I'm going to go with Charlie Munger. I really like, his rawness, his just, truth telling, and he's really rational to me for some reason. So I don't know. I like Charlie Munger, and I would love to just hang out and talk.
Yeah, I mean, most people, it's always funny, would probably say Warren Buffett, but Charlie had just as much impact as Warren did, but he's kind of the behind the scenes guy, just like, I mean, Wozniak was with Steve Jobs. So you always got to have that yin and yang.
And Warren Buffett is still here, so he's not a historical figure yet.
There we go. Not a historical figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do you have a special talent, or is there something super interesting about yourself that you'd like the world to know? And I don't know if you saw Steve Eisenstein try to juggle on the podcast. So let's go one step further about something, a funny special talent or whatever.
I wish I had something for you, Tony. I'm a regular guy, regular person. My wife, when my wife and I watch a movie, she hates the fact that I rate everything a 3 out of 5. And I'm like, listen, by definition, most things are going to fall in the average category, and I'm no exception to that. So I'm an average guy. An interesting fact, though, you may or may not have heard it, but I am from the Dominican Republic, and I do speak Spanish. And most people look at me and they don't know that. They just think, black guy. But I am from the Dominican Republic, and I speak Spanish, and that's probably been a little bit of an advantage for me in this industry. So yeah, that's probably a little bit somewhat interesting to somebody.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Final question. Any additional advice we didn't cover? Any additional thoughts, maybe questions I didn't ask that you want to share with the audience?
I would just say, as AI is doing more and more and taking over more and more, I'd say that we're probably going to be craving a little more analog in our lives, and we're probably in the right industry, so if you're thinking about getting into this or questioning your life choices, like a lot of us are from time to time, just hang in there, price everything accordingly, and prosper on.
Yeah. That's a nice thing too about AI, right? It can't replace you going out and setting up a tent. I mean, maybe eventually there's some type of drone or something that's going out and setting up a tent or a robot, but we're in a good industry that can't be replaced by AI like some others. So
we're gonna crave more in-person things is my thought, and
I hope so.
They're gonna need somewhere to sit. So or a space to host it in. So there you go.
Yeah, cool. All right, Ramon, it was a pleasure getting to know you. I look forward to seeing some shows coming up. So this was a great conversation. So let me take us out here. So want to start a rental business? Visit American Tent /tent rental and download our guide on the 7 steps to starting your own tent rental business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more great content, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And if you want to be a guest, email marketing@americantent.com. Thanks for listening to How I Rent It, and until next time, keep things intense.